The Trump administration just dropped the hammer on the wave of Chinese robots stepping onto U.S. soil. As the smoke starts to clear, the sweeping crackdown's far-reaching implications and surprising loopholes are becoming more apparent. Even proponents expect pain in the short term, but say the alternative is much worse for the future of the nation. Some want an even broader ban, while others say the White House has already gone way too far. Meanwhile, Beijing is vowing to retaliate, and it has some pretty powerful levers to pull. Is this really a national security measure, or American protectionism disguised as one? Or is it for leverage, ahead of Trump's high-stakes summit with President Xi? Will the restrictions leave the U.S. watching the humanoid robotics boom from the sidelines? Or will it force it to reindustrialize and rebuild the supply chain it spent decades moving overseas? The U.S. Federal Communications Commission just added foreign-made advanced robotic devices and power inverters to its covered list. The list is an official roster of equipment and services that national security agencies have determined pose an unacceptable risk to the country.
A shot across the bow at Beijing as Chinese companies seek to run out in front of an emerging market.
The federal government has previously used it to effectively ban technologies from the Chinese telecommunications giants Huawei and ZTE and drones from Shenzhen-based DJI. The FCC defines an advanced robotic device as a mechanical mobile robot that can move on the ground that has sensors to perceive its surroundings, network connectivity, and software that controls its movement and data collection. It must weigh more than 4.4 pounds, or just under 2 kilograms, including any docking station. The definition covers everything from humanoid and quadruped robots, wheeled autonomous mobile robots, and consumer products like robotic vacuums and lawnmowers. It does not include drones, which are already covered separately, self-driving cars, underwater vehicles, fixed industrial robot arms, surgical robots, or mobility aids like wheelchairs and exoskeletons. The formal rule is country neutral, covering any product that meets the definition that's not manufactured in the U.S. with at least 65% domestic components. But Chinese humanoid and quadruped robots from companies like Unitree are widely seen as the main catalyst for the action. The determination was viewed as inevitable for anyone paying attention. Jacob Hellberg, the Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs, proposed a ban 2 years ago as Commissioner of the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. Hellberg, who played a major role in convincing Congress to force the sale or ban of TikTok, raised concerns about China's humanoid robots being used for espionage, surveillance, security breaches, or even physical attacks if allowed into the U.S. market. When he proposed the ban, China's humanoid robots were advancing rapidly after Beijing set a national goal to mass produce them by 2025 and to lead the market by 2027. A few companies, like Unitree and UB Tech, had early models available in small numbers, but were mostly sold through specialized resellers for research and industrial testing. Very few were in the United States. Robotic dogs like Unitree's Go 2 were more readily available but remained scarce and outside of most consumers' budgets. Footage of the quadrupeds, adapted for military use cases, circulated widely in niche online communities, while Unitree insisted it did not support lethal modifications. By 2026, the picture had changed sharply. Humanoids from Unitree and others like Agibot became available online on Amazon for below 10 grand. Thousands of units were shipping globally, appearing in commercial settings for prices far lower than Western equivalents. The 2026 Consumer Electronics Show in January was a clear inflection point. Chinese robotics firms like Unitree, Agibot, EngineAI, and even the state-backed Beijing Humanoid Robot Innovation Center showed up in force. Viral footage showed the bipedal humanoids walking, boxing, doing logistics tasks, and interacting with visitors.
In history today with the first robot prostate exam.
Unitree especially entered the mainstream in the US as its compact G1 humanoids appeared on the season 21 premiere of America's Got Talent, and its founder, Wang Xingxing, made the cover of Time magazine. As Unitree's profile rose, video clips of incidents showing G1 robots accidentally striking children in China got widespread attention. Congressional activity on Chinese robotics intensified as Unitree pushed toward an IPO on Shanghai's tech-heavy star market. The U.S. House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, led by Republican John Mouliner of Michigan, introduced the GUARD Act, which would direct national security agencies to add robotic systems from countries of concern, primarily China, to the FCC's covered list. A separate bill filed in the Senate by Democrat Chuck Schumer of New York and Republican Tom Cotton of Arkansas sought to block federal agencies from buying or using robots manufactured by foreign adversaries. Leading U.S. robotics companies like Boston Dynamics and Agility Robotics lobbied in support of restrictions, calling them critical for national security.
Those risks are very similar to the kinds of risks that would happen if you allowed someone into your environment that was a hostile person, right? And so that robot could go around, manipulate things, look at things. To make that very realistic, if you had an assembly line, that robot could destroy the assembly line or otherwise take malicious photos of materials going through. So in many ways, a robot represents a kind of risk that is beyond the passive risks of IoT devices if compromised.
They say Beijing's subsidies on China's robotics sector make it impossible to compete with their prices. Agility CEO Peggy Johnson has been especially vocal.
Global competition in bipedal humanoids is accelerating, particularly with China investing heavily in manufacturing and commercialization. The U.S. should respond with a coordinated national robotics strategy.
Eric Zhang, the former VP of AI of 1X Technologies, called the GUARD Act terrible and short-sighted, noting that nearly every U.S. humanoid research lab relies on Unitree hardware. But shortly after Zhang offered to brief policymakers, the executive branch acted before the legislative process played out. In the near term, the practical impact is limited. Robots that have already been authorized by the FCC can continue to be imported and sold. Most of Unitree's product line has already secured approval, including its compact G1 and R1 humanoids, its full-sized H2, and its Go1, Go2, A2, and B2 robo-dogs. Unsurprisingly, Unitree's $650,000 rideable mecha robot, inspired by Avatar, is unauthorized. Agibot has gotten approval to sell its Lynx EX2 humanoid and its D1 quadruped. Faraday Future's rebranded Agibot models also received authorization before the cutoff. Other Chinese robots that have secured approval include Deep Robotics' Lynx M20 robotic dogs and Limix Dynamics' multi-form factor Tron. Robots that were not approved before the cutoff include EngineAI's PM1, the Terminator-inspired T800 and compact humanoids from Beijing-based Booster Robotics and Noetics. However, existing units that have already been imported are not impacted. The FCC reserves the right to yank authorization of previously approved products, though that requires more formal proceedings. The new rule includes a formal pathway for conditional approval to any foreign manufacturer. On paper, it's nationality neutral, but in practice, it's expected to favor allied countries. For now, it's only an issue for China because that's where the vast majority of humanoids and quadrupeds in the US originate. The Chinese government's response was quick and sharply critical.
保护主义提升不了美国的竞争力，只会损害美国企业和消费者的利益。中方将继续采取必要措施，坚定维护中国企业的正当合法权益。
China has several levers to pull. It could restrict critical components like rare earth magnets. Beijing could also limit access for American robotics companies to the Chinese market. For now, that would mostly impact Tesla, which is the one US company that's actively positioning its flagship humanoid, Optimus, in China. The FCC's move is unlikely to be the last word on the matter. Congressional efforts to codify the restrictions, which have apparent bipartisan support, are expected to continue. Some are already calling for stronger restrictions. Evan Beard, the CEO of the New York-based industrial robotic arm maker Standard Bots, has called the restrictions too narrow. He wants the US to also ban Chinese fixed industrial robot imports, saying they pose the same risks to national security as mobile bots. The case for that ban isn't as strong, however. Only around 4% of industrial robot arms in the US today are Chinese imports. Most are from Japan and Europe. Even China imports almost half of its industrial robot arms, though it's rapidly expanding its production. Standard Bots is a relatively small player in the market, though it recently secured $200 million in funding as it aims for 10% of the US market share by 2027. Meanwhile, the search for an alternative to Unitree's G1 for researchers and developers is on. Silicon Valley-based 1X Technologies says it's planning to release some of its neo-humanoids to support the cause. But another viable contender is in South Korea, where a decades-old robotics firm is getting attention for the open-source platform it's aggressively scaling. For the full details, check the related video.